Educational GMAT. Your partner in your GMAT journey.
Botanists, paleobotanists. Okay, there is such a thing. So S1 had greater number of spores, all right, and it contained pollen grains from species P, all right, wow, pollen grains from species P and spores from species Q. Okay. S2 had a greater number of species present. Okay. Species is more in S2. And all the spores it contained were from species Q. All right. Spores that it contained were only from species Q. Correct? Now, this is the information that is given to us. And then it says among these two samples would obviously be S1 and S2. S1 had a greater ratio of total number of dash to total number of dash. So your answer could be S1 had a greater ratio of total number of, let's say, spores to total species, or total number of pollen grains to total spores from species Q, and so on, right? That would be the answers that this is expecting. Let me give you a few minutes. Yes, guys.
First should be spores.
First should be spores, all right. So see, think about it. We have to maximize this ratio.
Is species
Sorry.
represented?
All right. Okay. Very nice. So we have to maximize the ratio for S1, correct? Maximize a ratio. Ratio obviously is numerator divided by denominator, correct? We have to maximize this. Agreed? When will we maximize this? Sorry. Absolutely. Numerator is more and denominator is less, correct? Right? So for S1, tell me what numerator is more. We are clearly given, right, that for species for sample S1, spores are more, correct? So we have to maximize the numerator. So obviously spores would be in the right. So we are saying, right, which of, notice among the two samples, which one are we very 100% sure that the ratio for S1 would be greater than ratio for S2? When will the ratio be more? If the numerator is more and the denominator is less, right? Then we are 100% sure that for S1, this ratio will be more. So obviously, spores are more, and what is less? Yeah. Right? We are given, notice, species are more for, number of species represented are more for S2, which means clearly for S1, species will be less. So spores divided by number of species presented is a ratio that will definitely be greater for S1 than it is for S2. Friends, are we clear? Right? I think after the explanation, this should not be that difficult. So we are talking about a ratio which for S1 is greater than for S2. So clearly for a parameter for which the numerator is more and denominator is lesser, clearly the ratio will be more. That specific ratio will be more for S1.
But we don't have a comparison between S1 and S2 regarding the
Between
said
what and what,
fields,
Pradya?
right? S1 and S2. So
Between
we
S1
are
and
comparing the
S2.
greater ratios of S1 to S2, right?
So yeah, correct. So let us take this ratio, Pradyan. Spores upon number of species presented. Okay. So that's the final answer that we are talking about. For S1, all right, spores are more than S2. Notice S1 has a greater number of spores. This is given to us.
Okay.
Correct. On the other hand, notice S2 had greater total number of species presented, which means S1 has lesser number. Correct. So numerator is lesser.
Like that is not so I can say that in S2 number of species numerator was greater than denominator. So but you can't compare the number of species in S2 with number of species in S1, right?
Can you repeat? Can you repeat? I think you might have a
So
point,
so
Pradhan. Mm.
so the
Mm,
better
mm,
explanation here would be,
mm,
so
mm, mm.
for S1 this ratio will always be greater than 1, because they said spores were the greatest and number of species represented will always be less than whatever the number of spores are.
Where is that mentioned?
So in S1 it says that it had the greater total number of spores. So if it had more number of species represented than number of spores, it would have said that, right? So,
Ah,
but you can't compare S1's number of species with S2's number of species.
okay. What's your point, Pradhan? Can you please repeat?
No,
I might be missing that point. You are saying that
so
for S1, this ratio will be greater than 1. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, correct.
Okay. And why are you saying that? That number of spores in S1 is greater than the number of species
No,
represented in S1. Now,
correct.
this is where my point. How are you getting that? Hmm.
But it said that S1 had a greater total number of spores, right?
Yes.
So it means if let me take the other case where species represented are greater than spores.
Species
Then it
represented are greater than spores.
greater than
Yes.
spores. Then it would have
Yes.
said S1 had a greater number of species represented, right? The problem statement.
Pradhan, this is where I'm having slight difficulty in understanding. How are you comparing in S1 number of spores and number of species represented?
Exactly. So when they're analyzing a sample in itself,
Mm-hmm.
if the number of species are more, they should say that S1 had a greater number of species, right? Uh, in that case, the way we earlier kind of compared between S1 and S2, that is even more vague, right?
Okay. So let's actually talk about that. And I see your point, Pradhan. Okay. Can we talk in terms of yeah. So actually, I will have to look into this question then because Pradhan has opened up a very interesting point. Let's actually discuss that, Pradhan. Let's say this is okay. Forget this. Let's say S1 and S2 are the two samples. All right. Spores and number of species represented. Correct? Okay.
Correct.
Can you give me an example? So spores are more. Okay. So let's take simple values. Suppose this is 5. All right. And let's say this is 2. Correct?
Okay.
Now S1 had greater number of spores. So which means let's say this can be 4 and number of species could be also 4, or let's take 5.
So that is what you are comparing S1 spores to S2 spores, right?
No. Uh, yeah, right. S1 had greater number of spores, right? So greater than S2, right?
So that is what I was talking about. So I thought that it was just analyzing S1 and we're just analyzing S2 here. So yeah, S2 had a greater total number of species compared to its spores, right? Not
Compared
compared
to
to S.
no. I really doubt that. When it says S2 had greater number of total species present represented, uh, I'm reasonably sure it's talking about compared to S1, compared to
Oh,
number of
okay.
species in S1.
Then they've that is really easy if they've given it that way, right?
No, but
So
that's what it is, Pradyan.
I
See,
thought
there
of another. So I thought
you
they've
can't compare.
analyzed
This is
S1.
where this is where I was actually getting confused with. You can't really compare number of spores with number of species. No, I mean it's like an apples to apples comparison. It has to be an apples to apples comparison,
No.
Pradyan.
See the statement. Each sample was analyzed to determine the number of spores in the sample, number of pollen grains in the sample, and the
Yes,
species to which these spores and pollen grains belong to, right?
correct. So what does
So
it
when
tell you?
they
Nothing.
no, so if we take the later as well, right? It does say the same answer uh, because it had
I
a
don't
total
care about
greater.
the answer. I don't care about the answer right now. I am just asking you one thing. What is your understanding of this statement? Tell me. S2 has greater total number of species represented. What is your, rather, let me ask you, what was your understanding with this?
Yeah, I understood that if you take a count of number of spores, number of pollens, and number of species, out of
Hmm.
these three, the greatest value was the number of species represented for an individual sample, not in comparison with another sample.
Uh, what Pradyan is saying is that, yeah, I really doubt that, Pradyan. See, basically, notice the way they are representing, right? S1 and S2. S1 had greater total number of spores would basically mean that S1 has total number of spores is the S1 sample had greater total number of
I do
spores
agree.
than
I do
S2
agree with
had.
your. I
Hmm.
do agree with your argument as well, but I don't think mine is wrong. So
No, your
uh,
is wrong, Pradyan. Your is wrong. S1 had greater number of spores. When we are analyzing two samples, it means S1 had greater number of spores than S2 had number of spores. Guys, okay. So, see, I mean, I'm just letting you know what Pradyun is saying. What Pradyun is saying is that when it says S2 had greater total number of species represented, what Pradyun is saying is that in S2, number of species is more than number of spores and number of
pollen.
pollens. That's my understanding also. That is comparing S1 and S2. It's like an apples to apples comparison, Pradyan. Species can only be compared with species, pollen with pollen. Species to spores. That's what is being discussed here. Okay. Yes. So, Pradyan, I would disagree with your interpretation.